Okay, so welcome to this webinar. The Iliad webinar series is yet again here. We are going to talk about interoperability between platforms, in this case, Iliad and EDITO, and we are looking at portability as well. So my name is Bente Liljaby. I am going to be your host as usual. I'm the innovation manager and doing other stuff also in the Iliad project. With us today, we have a very talented panel of experts, and we are going to dive a little bit deeper into the Iliad platform than we have done earlier. So just a little bit housekeeping first. Please let us know what you think. Your comments and questions are more than welcome in the chat. We do have a discussion after all the presentations at the end, so that's why I encourage you to write down as it comes to your mind. Don't be shy. And we are also going to post some polls, some very simple polls, so that we hope that you can answer, so that we are getting information about this ecosystem of digital twin experts, I would say. This webinar is also, as usual, recorded, and you will get access to the presentations on the Iliad website after a couple of days, I would say. So with that, I would like to introduce to you first the program, and also then, of course, I will start with an introduction to Iliad. So I will start by sharing my screen. And you should be able to see our webinar, Interoperability Between Platforms, Iliad Digital Twins of the Ocean, and EDITO is in focus. So we will first start with a very brief introduction to Iliad and digital twin concept. Then, of course, we dive deeper into it. Both the Iliad and the EDITO platforms will be presented by Arne-Jørgen Berre, our technical coordinator. Science coordinator in Iliad, and he will focus on interoperability and portability today. Arne-Jørgen is from SINTEF Digital. Then we will get an introduction from EDITO itself, EDITO-Infra platform with focus on STAC, the STAC solution they have, and that is Jerome Gasperi from Mercator Ocean International. And we will then go and see closer on Iliad and EDITO interoperability with STAC using the case of the Hub Ocean data platform with Tom Red. And finally, but not least, the digital twins of the ocean portability to EDITO, some examples that will be given to us by Volker Hoffmann, also from SINTEF Digital. So this is the program today. I will very quickly go through what a digital twin is. This is not a digital twin, obviously. This is identical twins. This is my father and uncle. And the point I want to make here is that as opposed to identical twins, human identical twins, they grow more and more different. Here, in this case, it's very hard to see who is who, but digital twins will actually become better and better as we improve, feed it with data and information. So there has been a lot of different definition of digital twins also during just the period that we have been working on Iliad project. But currently, the definition by ISO and IEC is that digital twins is digital representation of a target entity with data connections that enable convergence between the physical and the digital states at an appropriate rate of synchronization. And there are a couple of notes there also that gives us a little bit more flexibility to this definition. For Iliad, the digital twin is what we focus on digital twin is its interoperability, that is data intensive and cost effective digital twins of the ocean. This is just a very quick introduction to the concept. Digital twins consist then, of course, the collection of data using data. So this is a quite a standard data pipeline that is also valid for digital twins. We have data acquisition and collection. We have to store the data and prepare the data. Then we do some analytics. It could be artificial intelligence and machine learning. And of course, finally, we want to present the result in various ways, visualization, graphs, depending on the end user's needs. So that is the general perspectives. In Iliad, as I said, we are talking about twins, plural, as we are dividing the development of digital twins of the ocean in thematic areas. So we have identified or defined 12 very thematic areas for twins. Jellyfish, swarm forecast, oil spills simulation, plastic pollution monitoring, fisheries and aquaculture, marine and maritime insurance, aquaculture, water quality and ship traffic, coastal sedimental transport, ocean energy potential, met ocean height now and forecast, ballast water monitoring, harbor safety, and existing wind farm capacities. So those are the thematic twins that we have been developing. We have more than 20 digital twins of the ocean under development, actually developed in Iliad now. Very briefly, this is a Horizon 2020 project, the Green Deal project. We are ending this project in July, end of July this year. The budget is close to 19 million euros with the 30% of some of the partners, and the partners that we have 54 partners from 19 countries. And if you look closely at the map, you see it's not only Europe, but it's also Africa and the Middle East included. So with that, I would like to introduce the first speaker. That's Arne-Jørgen Berre. He is going to show us or go deeper into the Iliad platform and also EDITO platforms and focus on interoperability and portability. Arne-Jørgen is a chief scientist at SINTEF Digital. He is a very experienced developer of projects and running of projects dedicated to everything digital, I would say, Arne-Jørgen, but particularly fond currently of digital twins and, of course, artificial intelligence and much, much more. Arne-Jørgen, the floor is yours.
Yep, thank you. I'll just check, do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. And this should work here now. Here we are. Thank you, Bente. So as we see the evolution of the number of European digital twin of the ocean platform evolving, one very important area now is the focus on how this creates synergy with each other, and in particular on interoperability and portability between the different developments. As Bente said, there is a number of local and domain-specific digital twins that Iliad is working on. And we do see a lot of opportunities of synergies here with the MetOcean data, the underlying data of EMODnet and CMEMS and other data sets that EDITO platform is now supporting. So in this context, some of you might have seen this model before. It talks about a digital twin pipeline from data acquisition to digital twin representation to models, first principle and data-driven models and AI and machine learning and visualization and interaction. This shows the full kind of span of data flow in the context of digital twins. Particular to the left-hand side, we have a lot of different sources, real-time sources from sensors, observations, but also various aggregators such as EMODnet, CDataNet, new evolving European data spaces such as the Green Deal data space that will have aspects of biodiversity and climate data, the European Open Science Cloud data space. Also, Copernicus itself can be viewed as a data space, and then we have other sources such as citizens' data and so forth. There are interesting evolutions now with the middleware for data spaces such as Simple and the International Data Space Association having the Data Space Support Center in Europe. So a lot of thing is going on here, which essentially is an interesting source to feed data into the data lakes of digital twins. So digital twins essentially have a core data representation in data lake connected to the processing of a digital twin engine and further associated services and visualizations and interaction. So there are different evolutions here, both with EDITO. We have also Destination Earth that we'll mention, and the Iliad that will have their data repositories, and there can be the same, or they can be a set of those interoperating. So that's what we are going to look at. A core part here is semantic interoperability and data harmonization, bringing data into the data lake and harmonize the data for the further processing. And there might be also multiple twins that are interacting. If we relate this to the principal architectures of EDITO, we see the same elements here, the EDITO data lake, the EDITO engine, and the EDITO services. This is kind of read from the right to the left. So data is coming in to the data lake here from the right, being available close to the processing, both HPC and cloud processing here, and used from virtual research environment like Jupyter Notebook or RStudio or others, linked to visualization and user interaction. Another architecture that shows the same from the EDITO is shown here. We see the core part of the data lake on the upper left for data as a service. Then we have the models for the processing with model as a service, different types of models. And we have the user interfaces and then support of a platform as a service and infrastructure as a service to support this. One of the core decisions that have been made in EDITO, as well also in Destination Earth, is to do a data representation that is cloud optimized and for data that can be suitable for the model processing using STAC, Spatial Temporal Asset Catalog, which is a recent development or fairly recent during the last few years to represent spatial and spatial temporal data, geospatial data, with a set of say, standard representation forms and APIs that makes this more scalable in distributed environments involving geospatial information. Another aspect of data representation here is, as we saw, the data lake. And for data lakes, we have the so-called data lake medallion architecture, meaning that there is an evolution of data integration and data quality improvement from raw data coming from streaming sensor data or from batch data, providing this in the raw form, which is called the bronze level, which needs to be further harmonized, filtered, cleaned, augmented, integrated in the silver data lake until it gets to the gold level, which is actually what's called analysis ready, cloud optimized for analytics, AI, machine learning, and processing. So also in both Destination Earth and in the EU DTO with EDITO, the focus on the data lake is on the gold level, where data is represented in different forms that are ARCO optimized. So formats such as ZAR or Parquet or GeoZAR or GeoParquet are optimized for cloud-based processing and are suitable then for having data close to the processing, being cloud-based, HPC-based, or AI GPU-based, where we need access to large data volumes with high performance. So there is obviously some steps here to get from the data sets into the bronze, silver, and then to the gold level. And we'll talk about this. We see it partially in this architecture that we have these steps, in particular shown here with Iliad, that all of the data in front here comes from bronze and silver, and it needs to go from silver into gold for the data lake. And that's involve various kind of transformations and processing. Looking further at the EDITO platform, which has now been available in a few months for various kind of beta testing. You will find it on the EDITO website with a link to dive.edito.eu, where there are different levels of access, and everyone can go in for the Explore access. And there are some more need to be accepted as beta testers for the create and contribute levels. What we find here is then a platform with available services and the possibility to access data and to create new processes, setting up and working in this environment. And this is indeed what a number of projects, in particular in the Mission Ocean context, are doing and preparing for these days. So we have interaction with some of the so-called socio-ecological, socio-economic data projects. There are 4 of those. And they all are in the situation that they need to bring data from the bronze level to the silver level and into a gold level to bring into the EDITO-Infra data lake. Particularly for SIDITO, this is about socioeconomic, socio-ecological data and models. So the models will also then be available to be provided in the EDITO-Infra engine, working on the combined model from EDITO, which will be initially the EMODNet data and the CMEMS data, but then added here with the socio-ecological data. And then the various scenarios and models that are related to socioeconomic and socio-ecological models. So the SIDITO project is one of 4 projects that has started. So there are 3 other projects doing exactly the same here, with slightly different data sets and data models, but still the same need to bring data from bronze to silver and into the gold representation. Another example of the similar kind is the DTO Bioflow project. This is a similar model. This is actually read from the right to the left. So here, this is about biodiversity data, and the link here is to DTO Bioflow. So here is a number of biodiversity data of different sources that primarily goes to EMODNet biology for identified species on species observations. But there might be also others for biodiversity sources, such as image and video and acoustics and eDNA, where some of them might go in other forms into the EDITO data lake. We see here examples of some of the representation forms I mentioned, so ZAR and Parquet. Also NetCDF, CF is used, and there are various transformations here that is available. So this is something that a number of projects now will relate to, and there's a lot of activities on experimentation as this platform is evolving. With a link to Iliad, we see that there are the similar mappings here. We have the data lake, we have the engine, and we have the services. For the data space connections, EDITO is focusing in particular on bringing in CMEMS data and EMODNet data initially. But obviously, as projects like SIDITO brings in additional socioeconomic and socio-ecological data, and as DTO Bioflow brings in biodiversity data, there will be more data sources coming in. And eventually, in the future, we will also have connection to the European data spaces. A similar activity can be seen in the kind of umbrella project of Destination Earth, which is not only on, say, destination or the focus area of ocean and water, freshwater, but also on terrestrial and on other aspects. There are also here twins on climate change adaptation and on extreme weather. So this is another program outside of the Mission Ocean that goes into other areas, but also will have eventually a link to the digital twin of the ocean. And this approach is being harmonized, as you see, with the same architecture of a data lake, the digital twins with the digital twin engines and the services. And also this highlights that future European data spaces, such as the Green Deal data space, aquaculture data space, energy data space, will be sources of data, just as we see up on the left here, that can provide data that goes into the data lake. So when we talk about interoperability and portability between these, the question is, how do we deal with the data representation forms? How do we deal with the medallion architecture of bronze to silver to gold data going into the data lake, but also needs to be harmonized and made semantically interoperable. And this is where the STAC architecture comes in, and the use of ARCO formats, which will be important elements in this process. So what we have been working on now in the context of Iliad and EDITO interoperability is in particular of how the STAC architecture and related formats can be used both for providing data into EDITO data lake and to access data in the EDITO data lake. So that's really on data interoperability. There is also work on what we can say portability, because we are currently running on various data lakes in Iliad and on various compute engines. But there is also a question of bringing this onto the EDITO data lake and onto the EDITO engine, and elements of processing to be able to access the data in the same environment. So we also have this aspect of interoperability, which deals with portability between processing support services. So what we will do now is to present a bit more on the STAC and the EDITO architecture by EDITO, and then a presentation on the work that has been going on STAC data in Iliad being made available for EDITO. We also have activities and actually an Iliad catalog that also access and uses the EDITO STAC data, so this goes both ways. We have also an experiment that will present on how we are porting data onto the Iliad infrastructure and platform. So these are the two next presentation that will come up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of finishes my presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Arne-Jørgen, for this very nice overview of the links between the multiple platforms, actually. And as you were speaking, I was actually asking the audience here where, which platform they were using and or working on. And here you can see the results. So we have a lot, good representation from EDITO. So welcome here to this Iliad webinar. We have also a few users of the HubOcean data platform, and of course, Destination Earth. And as you can see, there are multiple other platforms that people are using. So thank you very much for participating in this, light poll. And now we will then move on to the next speaker. As Arne-Jørgen said, we will go deeper into EDITO. And with us today, we have Jérôme Gasperi. And he works at Mercator Ocean International. And he is, in fact, the product manager of the European Digital Twin of the Ocean, the EDITO project. So, Jérôme, I'm very happy to have you here with us. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. Do you everybody see my screen? It's okay?
Yes.
Okay, so Arne told a lot about EDITO in his presentation, but I will pass very quickly on the first slides, and I will make a focus on the STAC catalog because I think it's the important step for this presentation and this webinar today. First, a bit of context. So the EDITO platform comes from the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science, the ocean we need for the future we want. And on this United Nations Decade, this decade, yeah, Europe will to put in place a digital twin for the ocean, European digital twin. And here come EDITO, which is a European platform for discovering, visualizing, and leveraging products and knowledge to power digital twin of the ocean. So what it means, in fact, EDITO, very quickly, it's a place where you find ocean data, models, computing resource, CPU and GPUs, services and on-demand processing. So all this put in place and with tools that allows you to build your digital twin using this platform. So we have three, I would say, main point on EDITO. We have the explore, the create, and the contribute. And so basically, Explorer is basically exploring services, application, and data you have on the platform. So you can be a citizen, a stakeholder, a scientist, or whatever, and you just want to use a platform and explore all the digital twins that are provided by the platform. And create.
We still only see the first slide, Jerome. If you're showing some more,
you are still on the first slide.
I am.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
No.
is this the same for everybody?
Well,
No, we see it. So if you try now, it will be fine. Maybe
put it in presentation mode again and see what happens.
Yeah.
you can advance. Yeah, we'll advance to the next slide, perhaps. I see the first slide now.
Yeah, this is the second slide. Do you see it or no?
No.
I see only the first slide.
Switch your presenter view.
Yeah, I think in this case, I will present like this now. Is it okay?
Yeah, if you select the second slide, now we see the second slide.
Yeah, okay. So that was the second slide.
Yeah.
The first, I was talking about EDITO, and yeah, what I said was EDITO was a place where you have data models, computing resource services, and on-demand processing. And basically, we have the explore, create, and contribute. As I said, the Explorer is for citizen stakeholder to just see the services and browse the data, search for data, and have knowledge about the ocean. And create and contribute, it's really when you want to build your tools, your digital twin on the platform. So this is a create part. And the contribute is when you want also to share what you did, your data or your service to other people. And basically, we can sum up this into two different UI. You have the viewer for the exploring part, and we have what we call the data lab for the explorer, creating and contribute part. And the data lab is what Arne showed. So it's a UI where you can get resources, launch your service, existing service, or your own services, build your tools. And you can do everything on this. It's a bit like the developer, like when you have an Amazon account. I would say the Amazon to buy stuff is on the viewer side, and Amazon where you want to, on Amazon Web Services, when you want to play with the services, it will be the data lab. So this is a kind of separation between the two type of users. Next, we have what we call an EDITO engine. So the EDITO engine is basically made with process registry and service registry. So what we call a process, it's a temporary operation that takes input data and transform it into output data. For instance, transforming a netCDF into a ZAR, for instance, is a process. So you put an input and you have an output, and this is an atomic function that ends at the end of the process. And these processes, when you put processes on and we deploy processes on EDITO, it is automatically embedded with an OGC API process. I would say API. So if you develop your process and push it on EDITO, automatically you will have an OGC API process endpoint. So through this interface, people can trigger your process and get the result. At contrario, a service is more an application, like a web page, for instance. It's accessible for an URL, and it can be launched either for a limited period of time. For instance, you want to launch Jupyter to make a notebook, so you can launch it and you can stop it when you want. Or it can be also a permanently service. In this case, it's for instance a what-if scenario. So you have, for instance, what we have a marine plastic tracker what-if scenario. So it's always available, and you can play on this with this application, which is always accessible at the URL. And users can either publish process or services, or build services on top of existing processes. For instance, you find a process that you like. For instance, the netCDF2 ZAR transformer. You want to build an UI on top of it, a permanent UI, so people can directly use this UI and instead of getting registered to the data lab and so on, you can develop this service and put it on the EDITO engine. And at the end, it will be available on the EDITO platform. And so you have all the search, launch, stop, monitor, and publish your process and services. And we have also a direct dispatch operation to Euro HPC, meaning that we have some services like Jupyter, for instance, that are automatically built with auto-submit library, for instance. And so you have all the tools in the EDITO platform, so you can put your credential to register to your HPC account. And so, for instance, you can launch a process from EDITO and dispatch it on the HPC, for instance, in BSC, for instance, if you have an account. And to finish on that, I will make a focus on the data lake. So the data lake, it's made, of course, of a data storage. And on top of it, there is a catalog, which is STAC, conformed to STAC. So the data storage is on S3 buckets. And we have core catalogs, including Copernicus Marine Service, Marine and EMODNet data. And the data lake is built to host ARCO format, analysis ready cloud optimized format, data and metadata. And you have the ability to build and share your own catalog or to store and share your own data. So here I make a focus. There was an animation, but since I'm not in presenter mode, it's a bit complex. So basically, you have the STAC endpoint, and at the first level, you have the catalogs, which are, first we have a catalog which is called variable families, and basically it's a catalog that it is automatically built. I will go on it after that. And this is, I will say, a human readable, variable-oriented catalog. So basically below this catalog, you have catalog on temperature, biodiversity, CO2, current. So this is very simple concept. And below that, you will have your collection, your item, and so on. Also, you have, as I say, at the same level of the root endpoint, you have this variable family catalog, and then you have the Copernicus Marine catalog, where you have all the Copernicus Marine product, the EMODNet catalog, where you have all the EMODNet product. GLONET is also a core data. GLONET is our AI forecast system developed at Mercator. And you can have plenty of other catalogs, including any kind of project. For instance, we will see after that, but in Iliad, you have the ocean data platform that could be one entry in a catalog, for instance. And also we have a user catalog. Users catalog, so below the user catalog, you have one catalog per user. This is a private area, and so each user can have its own catalog, and below it can create any number of catalog and collection and put any number of items. So I separate it public from private, meaning that you have a public part and a private part. But of course, if you're a user and you have some private data you want to share, it's possible. So you can share it based on groups. So you can share to your community, or you can make it public and so on. The distinguish between the two is that to avoid that there is a mess at the root level, we cannot, as a user, you cannot push any catalog at the root endpoint. You can only do that after a quality control by the EDITO team. This is an anticipation of what we will have in EDITO phase 2 that is starting now, because right now you can effectively push any catalog on the root, which is a mess. So this is basically this schema here is for the next future, the coming months, where we will enforce this structure of the catalog. So below the catalog, you can, for instance, at the left, you have a focus on the variable family. As I said, below you have the catalogs per temperature, biodiversity, and so on. And below that, we have the collection. For instance, under the temperature, you will have the sea surface temperature, the sea surface skin temperature, and so on and so on. This collection are following the CF convention. And below that, you have the item. And in the items, you define the assets, which are the physical product you want to access. And these assets are stored on a EDITO data storage, or can be also stored on external storage. For instance, if I take the example again of the ocean data platform, You can have a metadata entry in an EDITO catalog. So from a user point of view, from EDITO catalog, you can search on the product of the Ocean Data Platform. But when you access the item and you go to the asset and to the physical product, of course, it will be stored on the Ocean Data Platform, and so you will be redirected to get the data. So this is basically the idea of the catalog. So which is a kind of centralized catalog, which reference either assets that are physically stored on the EDITO data lake or can be stored elsewhere. And to finish on that, so the STAC endpoint, catalog, collection, and item, we provide an API with get, post, put, and delete for everything, catalogs, collection, and items, which means that you can browse and search any catalogs, collection, or item. You can add a catalog, a collection, or an item, and you can update it and remove it. Of course, for this, you can only update and remove your catalog, collection, and item. So of course, there is an authorization layer, and it depends on your rights. And we also support groups. So for instance, in a project, you can have a project group right, and a member of a project will be able, for instance, to add, update, and remove any item or collection or catalog of this project. That's all for me. And if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Jérôme. We will we will have a discussion and answer questions after the two next presentations. If you have questions for Jérôme right now, just write it in the chat so you don't forget it, and then we come back to it. While you were speaking, Jérôme, I also asked a question. I asked if people here in this room are familiar with STAC. And as you can tell, there are a good mix. We have quite a few yes, many are learning, and some are completely unaware. Not completely unaware, I guess, but they are not familiar with STAC yet. So I hope you found this useful. I think you should. It was a very informative and very good presentation. Thank you very much, Jérôme. Now, the next coming up is Tom Red from Hub Ocean. He is the Ocean Governance Manager at Hub Ocean, and he leads activities related to ocean restoration and governance, and he is responsible for the involvement in European activities such as the Iliad project. And Tom is going to talk about the STAC on EDITO and the Ocean Data Platform. Tom, the floor is yours.
Bente. Thank you. I thought what I would do is just give a quick overview to what Ocean Data Platform is. And after Jérôme's presentation, a lot of the concepts are going to be very similar to what he presented. So that's good that we can reinforce that. And then talk a little bit about the sort of the integration into EDITO and how we sort of see Ocean Data Platform connecting to and sort of providing data into EDITO. So ODP is a platform, cloud-based geospatial platform that sort of enables some very similar things to EDITO. So it's a place where you can go to access ocean data, also store ocean data and work with ocean data. It's currently available. So if you visit this web URL, app.hubocean.earth, you see I'm logged in already, but you can also register for an account and start having access and looking at everything that's in there. You don't even need to register to look at the catalog, actually, because that's the catalog's open, so anybody can just visit the website and look at the catalog, which actually enables the sort of the integration with EDITO, which I'll come on to in a bit. So just going to talk about a few features of the platform. There's a catalog. This is a public catalog where you can access data that we've published on the platform, and we work with data providers from around the world. And I guess a little bit of the difference with ODP versus EDITO is we have a sort of more global approach. So, and of course, EDITO has a lot of global data sets, but there are some things on there that, for example, we work with some NGOs in the US to bring their data onto the platform, like this one from Protected Seas, which is an aggregation of protected area data sets from around the world. Is sort of one thing that we do. And another thing, we work quite closely with businesses to encourage them to share data that they might have collected but not shared publicly, to put that onto ODP, and then to think about how that could flow into, for example, EDITO. And we haven't got that far yet. We would very much like to, but there are some sort of technical things that we would need to do to enable that. And I just wanted to sort of show the example of this survey company, which collected 15 years worth of mammal and turtle observations in Brazil. And they provided all of that data to us in a sort of, you know, all the Excels and PDFs and all those fun formats. And we did some work in transforming that into this kind of like nice tabular data that can then be worked with, so it's kind of analytics ready. And that's kind of our philosophy, is to bring data to people that's analytics ready. So that's the catalog, and you can kind of go and investigate. There's all different kinds of data, and we add things to it all the time. Like EDITO, there's also a place where you can upload your own data to it. So I have a silly example here of a Phantom Island database that I've been working on. So, you know, finding where it actually is Atlantis. You can, yeah, this is kind of the joke, that you can go in and you can just find where Atlantis is. But just to demonstrate that this is sort of like a private collection that I've created, I can manage access, so I can give other people viewing rights or editor rights or even admin rights. And similar with EDITO, we don't allow people to push their private data onto the public catalog yet. That has to be going through a sort of a quality check process with the ODP team. Eventually, we would like to enable that more automated, but there are sort of some quality concerns that we have to concern ourselves with. So that was the sort of the uploading feature. And then we also have a workspace environment where you can have access to a cloud compute environment and a Jupyter lab, where you can go in and you can do your analytics and kind of do all the stuff that needs to be done working with data. And each data set in the catalog has a unique identifier. So I just got a question. Are you considering using Iliad? I should say yes to that. Everybody should say yes to that question. So yeah, so for example, you can go in and you can grab the UUID of that PGS data. So yeah, each data set in the catalog has a unique identifier, and that allows you to have API access to that and start querying it and working with it. Or if you want, you can just download it as a CSV. So that's that's ODP in a nutshell. There's a lot of documentation that we work on continuously to talk about sort of how to use the platform sort of from a developer's perspective. And we've actually recently released this tabular v2. So we have a very strong focus on enabling faster and better access and use of tabular data in its many forms. And so that's the kind of, I guess, one of the things that we work on most on the sort of architectural side. And we recently released this and see quite a big performance increase to our previous version of the tabular controller, which could be quite slow. So now going from sort of querying big data like we had GloDAP on here, we saw a sort of increase in 20 times. So it's kind of goes from minutes to seconds, which we're happy with. And then in terms of how we would see the interoperability with EDITO, this is something that we have just started on within the context of the Iliad project. We had a call last week with Jérôme actually to talk about how we might do this. We're in the process of developing a number of different endpoints for the public catalog. So one of those is a STAC catalog. So in time, this isn't implemented yet, just to be clear. It would be possible for EDITO to harvest or index the ODP catalog, and we can do that now, I understand, but we'd have to do it manually. So we're sort of trying to figure out the best technical solution to that, so that EDITO and other metadata catalogs could sort of index ODP and be able to sort of represent ODP data. Of course, that's the first step, and then figuring out how we get data to flow between the two is the next step. We do have an SDK, so I wonder if it's possible to do some tests of trying to pull ODP data into EDITO, but that's maybe a discussion that we need to have directly with the EDITO team and test out whether that's possible. I mean, it is possible to bring data from ODP out of the platform, so that could be a fun thing to explore. Yeah, so that was, in a nutshell, that's the sort of ocean data platform and how we see that interacting with and sort of enriching the EDITO platform. And in the context of Iliad, we're sort of looking at how we can do that in the next few months. So that's it from my presentation. Thank you, and I'll leave it for the discussions.
Thank you so much, Tom, for this very nice and quick overview of the work. And it's nice to see the involvement of the Ocean Data Platform, I have to say. We have, during your presentation, as you discovered, Tom, we did a poll asking if the audience here is considering using Iliad and or the Ocean Data Platform technologies. And there is a clear yes to that. And there are also some people who are considering if it is possible for them. So thank you again for participating in the poll. This is I hope you see it as useful, because we are doing exactly that. We find it useful to see where you are coming from and what is in your interest. So moving on then to the last but not the least speaker, Volker Hoffman from SINTEF Digital. He is a data scientist, engineer, and project manager, and he is using various tools for digital twins. And today he will show us some examples on the implementation of digital twins on some concrete examples. The floor is yours, Volker.
Great. Hi, can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good, perfect. So thank you very much for the introduction. And I have sort of the last talk in this series, and I think it makes a bit of sense, because now we've heard a bit about Iliad, we've heard about EDITO, and we've heard about the Ocean Data Platform. And what I will show is sort of my attempt of taking something we have done in Iliad, where we took a digital twin of the ocean sort of pilot and deployed it in our sort of own way. And then we moved it onto the EDITO platform, and just sort of show you some of the lessons we've learned and how we did that. So we're framing this as an interoperability kind of thing. So for us, interoperability really means that we want to run the services and processes that we developed on different platforms. And if you sort of do this properly, it's easy, and if you don't do this properly, it's going to be very hard. So so we've done it in a sort of intermediate way, which means that, you know, as you move along, you have to sort of fiddle and change things. So this is our starting point. These are 3 pilots for digital twins of the ocean that we've built in Iliad. So the one on the left, it's an aquaculture risk pilot. It's mostly based on, it looks at the location of salmon aquaculture farms in Norway, and then it calculates some sort of risk metric. And it's sort of packaged in a more or less standard way. There's a bunch of Docker containers and they run, but they're deployed kind of manually. So the pilot in the middle is also an aquaculture pilot, but it's a little bit more focused about how aquaculture sites are connected through ocean currents. So it calculates the connectivity matrix between them, and there's a batch job that runs every day that does that kind of thing. And again, it's deployed with a bunch of containers. But here we've gotten a little bit further than on the first pilot, where we have a sort of nice build pipeline. We push new code and a new container is built, and then that's sort of automatically deployed onto our own Kubernetes cluster that SINTEF is running itself. And then there's a third kind of pilot, which again is a little bit the same, but not quite the same. It's a water quality pilot, and part of that is that there's a camera that sort of measures the depth profile of particles, and then it runs an ocean drift model to predict where these particles are going. And again, it's a bunch of containers that do that, but instead of a custom front end, it pushes it into Grafana. And the deployment is a little bit like the first, so it's sort of manual Docker containers. Since the middle one is the one we've sort of come the furthest in terms of a proper continuous deployment pipeline, we pick that one as a first pilot to try to bring onto the EDITO platform. So now we've heard from Jerome that EDITO platform can actually mean many things. There's the STAC, there's a database, there's a data lab, there's, I forgot what the first thing was called, but we had the map and you could sort of play around. For our context, that means we're talking about the EDITO data lab. So if you log into that EDITO data lab, which is based on a product called Onyxia Data Lab, which is really nice actually, you will see a bunch of services, you see a bunch of processes. And on each of them, you can sort of click launch, and then they will be launched and you can do stuff. There's many other things there, as you can manage your own secrets, you can manage your own data storage, you can explore data, and you can set up your connection credentials for example, CMAPs. But our sort of main objective here was to take this pilot about aquaculture and manage to bring it into this EDITO data lab here. And that's kind of what we've done here. And to sort of understand how this works, I'd like to show you how we understand the EDITO platform. It's probably a little bit different than how the makers of the platform understand it. But sorry, one step in between. I will show you how we understand the platform in a second. What this is if you sort of manage to get your thing into EDITO, this is how you can launch it. So on the right, you will see, you sort of click it, and then you have a bunch of variables you can set. And how you get these there is a little bit complicated, but it's possible to manage in the end. And then you click launch, and then this thing will run. But to sort of get this to appear there, the way to view the EDITO platform is, I think, this is a nice way, so that it has 4 main components. And again, Jerome can probably correct me properly here. But the main thing is that there's a Kubernetes cluster that runs the whole thing. And it does that by taking things that are packaged as Docker containers and deploying them wherever it is appropriate. So all of these packages, these services and processes that you can deploy on EDITO, on the data lab, they are packaged as Docker images. And the way they are, and the way they're deployed is described by something called Helm charts. We'll get to that in a minute. And then there's a storage component, which is based on Minio, which is an S3 compatible object storage. This is the sort of storage component you will interact with. And then there's this Onyxia-based data lab front end here. If you have this architecture in mind, the way to get something onto the platform is then this way. You have sort of 2 sort of separate tracks you need to work with, and they're a little bit independent of each other. The upper track here is that you start with your application code, and that can be whatever programming language you want. In our case, it's Python. And then you will push that code to your Git repository. Then it will be a bunch of runners that sort of act on the code being pushed. And in the end, what comes out is a software package uploaded to some kind of Docker registry. In our case, it's a private one, but you can also use public ones. And there's no restriction that your application package produces only one Docker container. It can be multiple, but then you have to sort of stitch them together. This is the first component you need, and it's completely independent of EDITO. And this will run anywhere. And initially, we developed it such a way that we just deploy this into our own cluster. The thing that you do need for EDITO is the bottom part. So you need this, what's called here, deployment specification. There's this thing called Helm chart, which tells the EDITO platform what your container needs, sort of the kind of resources. It defines the credentials you want to inject. It defines any kind of environmental variables that you want to be visible in your application. And there's a bunch of examples provided by Mercator Ocean, and you sort of start from them and then you tweak them until it runs. So anytime you push an update to the Helm charts to Mercator Ocean's Git repository, there will be a pipeline running. And if your Helm charts pass all the checks, they will be uploaded to some sort of middleware. And then it will appear on this sort of EDITO data lab /Onyxia front end from where you can launch them onto their Kubernetes cluster. Sounds very easy, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, many things can go wrong. This is my favorite slide because it's all the things that went wrong. The first thing here on the left is that getting to actually define your file access credentials, which are very visible in the data lab, to actually get them to show up in your container can be a little bit of a struggle. So there's this wonderful Git commit history here, where some guy, it wasn't me, but I blacked out who it was. He added the credentials, then it didn't work, so he dropped them again. Then he commented out, then restored it, and in the end he just sort of gave up and said, I just use anonymous access. Yeah, so there's a bit of a struggle involved. In the end, we got it to work with help from the Mercator Ocean people, so they're very nice too and very helpful, I think. The other thing that you see on the left is that these credentials expire. So if you have a long-running service and you use the default configuration, for example, at some point, well, after a day, you will lose access to your storage. So this is something you need to handle. And then the last thing that could possibly go wrong, there's a very long list, but this is another thing that went wrong, that we wanted to pull our container from our Docker images from a private registry, which also took a little bit of hacking, because then you need to inject credentials to access that registry at the correct point in time. But again, we made it work. Again, thanks to lots of help we got from the platform team. So this is kind of a list of things that can go wrong, and in the brackets you see how you can deal with that. And in addition to the sort of things I just showed you, is that the main thing is if you have something that has multiple containers, and our pilot has that, it has a front-end container that sort of shows the results, and it has an open drift container that sort of calculates the connection between the ocean sites. So it runs a drift model. And originally on our own implementation, we just use a shared volume in Kubernetes. And that works fine if you have a small cluster and you control everything. But if you move to some cloud platform that is maybe more complicated and that you don't have full control over, that doesn't really work very well. So what we did is we moved into the sort of cloud native geospatial world and used the ZR instead of netcdfs, where you can directly write a ZR file into an S3 storage. And that's actually very cool. So you don't need to make a netcdf, upload it, and then the other container download it. You just directly access the S3 storage, and you write only the bytes that you need. And on the other container, you read only the bytes that you need. And it's quite fast, so that's nice. Other problems were to sort of get information into these containers that you don't encode when you build the container, so like in the Docker file, but sort of runtime variables, you need to use environmental variables. Maybe you want to inject secrets, like access secrets to some third-party servers. We, for example, use something called Barentswatch to get additional data, and also to get private Docker images. Again, you need to inject some sort of secret into the build pipeline. So all this is possible, but you do need to do some acrobatics in your Helm charts. But the documentation is quite good, and it's possible, but it takes a little bit of patience, especially when you do it the first time. Then there's this thing that the credentials might be expiring if you have a long-running service. There are options where you can create credentials that don't expire, or you can refresh them in code. We haven't done that. And I think the last one is maybe the biggest problem if you want to find out how things work. It is very difficult to replicate this whole setup on your local computer to experiment. As there are many software packages that will help you do it, but it's a big pile of work, and you're going to end up reading many tutorials. So this is a bit challenging if you don't already live in this world. What is nice is that you have your own kind of Git branch on the Mercator issue on the GitLab, and you have your playground in the EDITO Data Lab, so you can play around and iterate a lot, and it will not bother anyone else. So that's nice. But you still have this loop where you commit some code, you push it, you have to wait for the checks to pass, and then it will show up or it will not show up, or it might crash or it may not crash. So this is, I think, a challenge in this workflow. So in summary, we did manage to port this one thing, this aquaculture demo onto EDITO. So it's running now, and I launched it again now. Soon the credentials will expire and then it will not work anymore. So this is the next thing we want to fix. We did port it onto the infrastructure. And when we say EDITO infrastructure, that's sort of our external view of it. It's really this Onyxia Data Lab or EDITO Data Lab. Then it's a Kubernetes cluster and a bunch of Helm charts. You have the GitLab services where you that sort of process your Helm charts and then put them onto the platform. And there's this distinction of services and processes in EDITO, which we haven't really gotten into, but that's something we need to keep in mind. If you have something you want to put onto the platform, the like if you boil it down, the only thing you need is your code in a Docker image and a bunch of Helm charts. And again, I really want to point out that we got great support from the people at MacroOcean, especially these three here, Quentin, Martis, and Simon. They helped a lot to make it work. And there's a lot of tutorials available. So I think you should just try, and it's really a fun exercise. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Volker. Of course, portability is an important aspect of interoperability. And I was posting about this webinar on LinkedIn, and I showed some devils, and I think you helped me, Volker, to show how the devils look like. So thank you for that. Devils in the details, you know. So thank you very much. But overall, it seems like it's possible to make something operational and work, which is I'm very delighted to conclude.